Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching The World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of the hour. Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado says she presented her 2025 Nobel Peace Prize medal to President Trump during a White House meeting. The Norwegian Nobel Committee says the prize cannot be transferred and Trump praises the gesture but still does not endorse her. Denmark says any US acquisition of Greenland is out of the question and violates international law and sovereignty. The statement comes after the White House says European troops have not changed Trump's goal to acquire the island. Trump announces the creation of a board of peace to oversee efforts to end the war in Gaza. The White House says the body will focus on diplomatic and security steps towards stability. US officials warn Iran at the UN that all options remain on the table over a deadly crackdown on protesters. Activists say more than 2,600 people have been killed as Iran maintains an internet blackout. Israeli strikes kill at least 10 Palestinians in Gaza as the US says ceasefire talks have moved to a second phase. Health officials report a 16-year-old is among the dead after homes are hit in Deir al-Balah. European soldiers begin arriving in Greenland to boost security after talks reveal a fundamental disagreement with the US. France, Germany, Norway and Sweden are taking part in the deployment. President Trump threatens to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy US military troops to Minnesota to quell protests over ICE action. The warning follows clashes in Minneapolis after a federal agent shot a man in the leg and protests surged after a previous fatal shooting by an ICE officer. Former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol faces his first court ruling over a failed martial law attempt. He could receive up to 10 years in prison if convicted of obstructing an arrest warrant. Those are the top headlines, but we start this hour in the United States, and the White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has stated that Iran has halted 800 executions under pressure from US President Donald Trump over its crackdown on a wave of protests. Leavitt has added that Trump is monitoring the situation closely and keeping all options on the table. Let's take a listen into her statements.
The president received a message, as he revealed to all of you and the whole world yesterday, that the killing and the executions will stop. And the president understands today that 800 executions that were scheduled and supposed to take place yesterday were halted. And so the president and his team are closely monitoring this situation, and all options remain on the table.
Meanwhile, the US has also imposed sanctions on 5 Iranian officials that it has accused of being behind the crackdown on protests. The US Treasury Department, in a statement, said it imposed sanctions on the Secretary of the Supreme Council for National Security, as well as Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and law enforcement force commanders, accusing them of being architects of the crackdown. This comes as over 3,000 people have reported to have been killed in these protests, which have lasted just over 2 weeks. Of course, Iran is currently facing an internet blackout, so information is extremely limited coming out of the country. However, what we do think we know is that these protests have lost the momentum they were at the around 4 days ago, where they were at their peak. However, we heard Donald Trump saying that he was going to intervene in Iran and that help was coming. We're unsure what that yet means. Matthew Vadome joins us now. He's an American journalist. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. to discuss this. Matthew, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, this has been an ongoing situation. Donald Trump said help was coming for the Iranian people, pushing them to take over their institutions. Is it merely economic sanctions and tariffs that we're going to see as a response from the US president, or something more serious in the future, given the fact that these protests are reported to have calmed down?
Well, only Donald Trump knows what Donald Trump is going to do. So, it's possible that there won't be any sort of military action, but I hope that's not the case. More sanctions might apply more pressure to the Iranian mullahs, the dictatorship there, but the sanctions have been in place for decades, and they're still in power. So it's unclear what Donald Trump means when he says that something else is going to happen with respect to Iran. It's good that the mullahs have agreed to hold off on what is that, a reported 800 executions, but they've killed thousands of people already. So that 800, the 800 lives saved temporarily by reprieve, that seems like a drop in the bucket. And they're still murdering people in the streets, the Revolutionary Guard and so on. And I think that the Iranian government is just throwing these reprieves out as a bargaining chip, and I hope the United States doesn't fall for it.
Why do you say sadly about the idea of the United States not getting involved? The Middle East, of course, is thousands and thousands of miles away from North America. Why do you say that?
I think it's time for the Iranian regime to end, and the United States was instrumental in blowing up sending missiles to target their nuclear program. Israel has also been took military action against Iran, and I think people are just tired of waiting. And now that the Iranian government is in full-fledged homicide mode, gunning down protesters, I think it's time to do something serious about it. But I'm just one guy. President Trump doesn't listen to me, and he has other concerns that he has to weigh in the meantime. But I don't make any secret of the fact that I despise the Iranian dictatorship and want it to go away. So I'm not objective on that point.
Yes, Matthew, do stay with us as we move from the Middle East to Gaza. And the US President Donald Trump has announced the formation of a Gaza Board of Peace, a key phase 2 element of a US-backed plan to end the war in the enclave. Trump has said that it is a great honor to announce that the Board of Peace has been formed, and the members of the body will be announced very shortly. Trump added that he can say with certainty that it is the greatest and most prestigious board ever assembled at any time and any place. The board's creation comes after the announcement of a 15-member Palestinian technocrat committee charged with managing the day-to-day governance of post-war Gaza. The committee will work under the supervision of the Board of Peace, which will be chaired by Trump, as the plan also calls for the deployment of an international stabilization force to help secure Gaza and train vetted Palestinian police units. Matthew joins us once again to discuss this. Matthew, of course, it's great news that that they're moving on to the second phase. However, a lot of critics are saying that how are they doing this? The first phase isn't completed yet. There seems to be one hostage still remaining in Gaza. Hostilities continue. Over 400 Palestinians have been killed after the October the 10th ceasefire, as well as the not the full flow of aid as was previously required. And so why is Donald Trump moving on to his second phase now when the first phase has not yet been completed?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for you on that. I think that he is just anxious to move the peace process forward in Gaza, and he wants he wants a successful deal to be in place. But yes, there has not been compliance by Hamas. Hamas has not disarmed, but now we're learning that another agreement is going to have to be made in order for that disarmament to take place. So this is not the way I understood things to be before. And now on the Palestinian side, they claim that Israel is in violation of the peace plan because it still has some soldiers in Gaza. So, from 7,000 miles away, I can't tell you. What's actually going on the ground in Gaza.
They've killed over 400
but yeah,
people.
both sides have complaints.
Yes. But of course, the operations continue to retrieve this hostage body in Gaza. Egypt is helping with that, although it is seemingly proving very, very difficult. This board of peace, we don't know that much about it. Can you tell us anything about how it will work? Who is on it? Who do we know who is on this board of peace, and what kind of role it's going to have in running the enclave?
Well, I thought that wasn't the head of it a Bulgarian fellow by the last name of Mladenov, and I thought he was supposed to be heading it, but international. Political figures will be on it, including some from the United States. Is Witkoff going to be on it? I'm not sure. Ambassador Witkoff might be part of that process. I'm not entirely sure. But they're going to be, they're calling themselves technocrats, in other words, experts, and who are going to run this board of peace. And somehow it is going to going to be treated. It's going to be credible to the Palestinians, to the Gazans, and is going to run some sort of a transitional government there. And I think it's an open question how it is actually going to operate, because this is something new, and I don't think it's been tried before in the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So. These things, any sort of peace plan, especially in a place that's so accustomed to war, like the Middle East, these things never move forwards smoothly, and there are going to be trouble. There are problems along the way, and I think we're seeing that right now.
Matthew Verdum, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always. We move over to the Indo-Pacific next, and China's President Xi Jinping has met Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney in the Chinese capital of Beijing. Both sides struck an upbeat tone once they met, and Carney told Xi he sees immediate and sustained progress ahead. He pointed to agriculture and agri-food, energy and finance were also highlighted as key areas of cooperation. Carney also said he is pleased the two countries are forging a new strategic partnership. President Xi welcomed the shift. He said healthy and stable Canada-China ties serve both nations, and they support global peace and stability. Xi added he is encouraged by recent progress and said a meeting last November marked a clear turnaround in relations. The talks come as both sides work to rebuild trust after years of strained ties, with trade, investment and global cooperation high on the agenda. Joining us now is Ross Feingold. He's a political analyst and he joins us live from Taipei, the capital of Taiwan. Thank you very much, Ross. It's a pleasure to talk to you. Before we get into the wider implications of this, what is expected to be discussed at the meeting between Xi and Carney? What's going to make it so significant today?
The interesting thing about your question is to make it significant is just the fact that he's there, that Carney has decided to go to Beijing. It's been so many years since a Canadian prime minister has visited China. China has reasons why it's angry at Canada going back several years already. So this is a relationship that's had a lot of tension in recent years. And we have to be frank here. Carney's there to make money. Right? He wants to significantly increase exports from Canada to China. So when it comes to what they're going to talk about, the ideal outcome for Carney would be commitments, real commitments, not just talk, but actually announced deals for purchases of Canadian, whether it's agriculture or other natural resources, and that's what he's there for. But again, the real significant thing is that Carney is basically saying, I want to put the tensions behind us and move forward, and that's a great outcome for China, and that'll get Carney a lot of criticism. There's already a lot of criticism in Canada, but for China, it's a great outcome because it's another country, and we've seen several other leaders visiting China recently or upcoming. They're basically saying, we're not going to criticize China so much with regard to some of the things that we were criticizing China about in the past years, because if they wanted to be critical, they just wouldn't be there. So by going there, they're saying, we're going to dial back down those criticisms, and we're just looking to make money.
And Ross, of course, the rhetoric that Donald Trump used to float about Canada becoming the 51st state has dialed down now. However, how do you think Washington will be looking at this visit?
Yeah, that's also really interesting because there's been so much discussion when it comes to U.S.-China relations about the positive things President Trump says about his personal relationship with Xi Jinping. And that's true. President Trump does often emphasize that we're friendly, we're friends, and I get along well with him, he likes me, I like him, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that the United States continues to encourage its close partners, and that includes Canada at the moment, despite the tension that existed with Canada over the course of 2025. But behind the scenes, the Trump administration is certainly still encouraging or even pressuring Western countries, Japan, Australia, to reduce their reliance on China, to de-risk from China, to be suspicious of Chinese technology products, avoid Chinese technology products in their own supply chains or infrastructure. So a lot of the things that the Trump administration came to do in its first term with regard to China, that stuff is going on at the moment as well. So I do think that behind the scenes, the United States is going to be passing a message to the Canadian government. You want to sell to China, that's okay, but you still have to be very careful.
And Ross, the Canadian government sees aspects of China's behaviour as a national security threat, of course. How does a country like Canada balance the diplomatic tightrope with a country that, of course, is a national security threat in some aspects, but also an economic manufacturing powerhouse that China is?
This has certainly been a topic of discussion in Canada, just the way that it has been in European countries and, of course, in the United States or Australia. So there's been a lot of discussion in Canada about how to make their own laws robust against people working on behalf of foreign countries. And usually they are talking about China or Russia. Supply chain issues, keeping Chinese technology out of critical infrastructure, spending more on their national defense. These are all topics of public discussion in Canada. But there's going to be, as I said, a lot of criticism of Carney for going there at this time, because critics are going to say, for the reasons that you just mentioned, that China's a national security threat to Canada, and now is not the right time to be going there and making nice with the Chinese leadership. But as I said, Carney's doing the same thing that a lot of other leaders are doing, and President Trump plans to do this year as well. So he does have a strong pushback to the criticisms.
Ross, do stay with us as we move over to the United States for our next story. And Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado has presented her Nobel Peace Prize medal to President Donald Trump at a private White House meeting. In a response on a social media post, US President Trump expressed his gratitude, saying the move was a wonderful gesture of mutual respect. Speaking on the meeting with Machado, US President Trump said her meeting was a great honor, calling her a wonderful woman who has been through a lot. Trump, who often speaks about his desire to be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, has expressed displeasure when it was given to Machado, and she decided to accept the honor last year. Machado, ahead of the meeting with Trump, said that she would share the prize with him, but the Nobel Committee later clarified that it was not transferable. Trump had previously described Machado as a freedom fighter, but rejected the notion of appointing her to lead Venezuela after Maduro's removal, arguing that she lacks sufficient domestic support. Listen in to what Machado had to say.
I presented the President of the United States the medal of the Nobel Peace Prize, and I told him this, listen to this. 200 years ago, General Lafayette gave Simón Bolívar a medal with George Washington's face on it. Bolívar since then kept that medal for the rest of his life. Actually, when you see his portraits, you can see the medal there. And it was given by General Lafayette as a sign of the brotherhood between the United States, people of the United States and the people of Venezuela in their fight for freedom against tyranny. And 200 years in history, the people of Bolivar are giving back to the heir of Washington a medal, in this case a medal of the Nobel Peace Prize, as a recognition for his unique commitment.
Meanwhile, ahead of the meeting between US President Trump and White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt has said that Trump's assessment of support for Machado still stands. Let's take a listen.
Is it still the president's assessment that it would be very hard for Ms. Machado to leave Venezuela because he says she lacks the respect and support in that country? And will he raise that with her today?
I think the president's assessment that you just pointed out was based on realities on the ground. It was a realistic assessment based on what the president was reading and hearing from his advisors and national security team. And at this moment in time, his opinion on that matter has not changed.
Ross Feingold joins us once again to discuss this. Rossi, an interesting development today in this in the Venezuela saga. Do you think the Nobel Peace Prize winner Machado will be disappointed now that she hasn't been given any sort of indication that she'll be in Venezuela's future whatsoever?
Of course, she's hugely disappointed. There's one thing that she wants, and giving her Nobel Prize to President Trump is part of that. She wants to be the leader of Venezuela. She was barred by the Maduro dictatorship from participating in the election, but basically her proxy candidate won, and then the result was stolen by Maduro. So she does think she has legitimacy as the leader, and she's probably very perplexed that President Trump has taken this view that she lacks legitimacy and shouldn't be the leader. This is all, of course, very much a work in progress. Right now, we still have basically Maduro's people running the country, even though President Trump said that the U.S. is going to run the country. We really don't know what level of involvement in day-to-day government in Venezuela President Trump intends for the United States to have. Will there be an early election? Are they going to wait until the next election is scheduled to occur? Is Trump going to really take an action to push out the current government overnight, and then there really would be an opportunity for Machado to take power. So all of that is really unknown at the moment, but one thing we do know is that she wants to remain relevant. She is still trying to say that I really am the person at the moment that the people support as the leader. Unfortunately, things aren't working out as easily as she had hoped.
What do you think of the politicization of the award? How do you think the Nobel Prize Committee will be looking at all the events that have happened after she was awarded the prize?
The politicalization of the Nobel Peace Prize is something that's been going on for literally decades. So I think the current committee members are somewhat immune to that, or whether it's criticism or whether it's discussion afterwards. Why did you award it to this person and not that person? It kind of comes with the job. So again, I think they're kind of immune from that pressure. I will say this though: if there is a Ukraine-Russia ceasefire agreement in the coming weeks before the deadline, and keeping in mind the deadline for the 2025 prize is upcoming as well, then it becomes more difficult to ignore President Trump, because as President Trump likes to remind us, he's been involved with negotiating ceasefires for, he says, 8 different wars. There's debate about whether or not that's accurate. But if Ukraine and Russia do reach an agreement, then I think it becomes more compelling to award it to President Trump. But again, the committee, I think they're immune to whatever President Trump says, or the White House spokesperson says at the podium, or people say on social media.
Ross Feingold, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to talk to you. As always, thank you for taking the time. We now move on, and the United States and Taiwan have reached a new trade deal that cuts tariffs on many Taiwanese exports, especially semiconductors, while encouraging new investment in the US technology sector. Under the deal, Taiwanese chip makers such as Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company will face lower tariffs if they expand manufacturing in the United States. Some semiconductor products and equipment will also be allowed in the US duty-free. Tariffs on most other Taiwanese exports to the US will be reduced from 20% to 15%. Taiwan has also agreed to provide an additional $250 billion in credit to support further investment. The announcement lifted shares of chipmaker NVIDIA, which relies on Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Companies for production, sending the stock up more than 2%. While semiconductors were invented and largely designed in the US, many of the most advanced chips are made overseas, especially in Taiwan. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.